All right. We're going to change gears back to what happened in Mexico over the weekend. Randy Clark is with me. He is from our Cartel Chronicles initiative at Breitbart News, which is one of the most important things we do. He's got about 3 decades in law enforcement experience prior to him joining us in the media space. Randy, so I set up kind of the basics of what happened in the top of the show in the first segment today over the weekend. And so, first of all, I want to get a sense of, do we consider this a good thing overall? Clearly, there's terrorism that took place afterwards, but El Mencho, one of the worst guys, and I want you to contextualize that, in all of really narco-terrorism in the world, and he's gone now. So is this a positive, or what do we to make of all of this?
Oh, it's absolutely a positive, especially when you go back and you look at what we've seen out of Mexico's current president and the statements that she's made. She's come very clearly out at the beginning with policies that are much like her predecessor, AMLO, saying, basically it's hugs, not bullets, and that violence is not going to cure this. The stance between the two has always been, kind of like the Democrats on immigration. Let's go after the root causes, right? These folks are in cartels because of poverty and education. Let's improve those things and it'll get better and they'll stop doing this, which we know that's not to be the case. So this is a great thing. El Mencho was a very powerful person. There's a lot more work to be done, but it sends a message that this president can be manipulated to take action against the cartels. And we've heard quite clearly by the president that their days are numbered. So, when he speaks, usually action follows. And I think that's what we just saw yesterday.
So, Randy, talk to me about just the nature of Scheinbaum herself, because do you feel like, what is her connection to the cartels specifically? Because she seemed, until this weekend, at a minimum, tolerant of Mexico basically operating as a failed narco state. And then all of a sudden this changed. Do you think she had a change of heart? Was she compelled by Donald Trump? Like, what do you think is happening here?
I think she was 100% compelled by Donald Trump. She shares a lot of similarities with the left in the United States. She's had some contact with educational institutions here. She's very pro-green energy. She's very anti-fossil fuels. And so she's going to have the mindset of somebody who sympathizes with the lawbreaker and probably doesn't believe that incarceration is going to change levels of crime. So I don't think she was really too upset about not taking a firm hand with these folks and just allowing them to act. But the cartels in general are extremely powerful in Mexico. As you know, they've got near 200,000 estimated members. If it was an employer, that would be about the 5th largest employer in all of Mexico. So their hands, to some extent or another, are in every single state to some extent or the other. And CJNG, they count with about 30,000 to 40,000 estimated members. And they're heavy into fentanyl, heavy into methamphetamine. They're a global organization that moves throughout 40 countries, it's estimated, including the Italian mob, to circulate drugs in Europe. They're very well known for importing precursors from China along the coast. They sit right below Sinaloa and Nayarit on the coast. So they're positioned well, and they have a lot of alliances, with the exception of probably just the former Zetas, the CDN. They've got some kind of alliances off and on with every major cartel in Mexico.
So how much does this help Mexico that he's gone? Or do you feel like there's just someone waiting in the wings to take his place, and perhaps they'll be able to use this as a recruiting tool? You always wonder about such things.
Well, I'll tell you from my experience, when I first got in the Border Patrol, anytime you said cartel, it was somebody in Colombia, right? So we saw these things in the Border Patrol and through our intelligence programs kind of grow and blossom, get destroyed. And at one point, we modeled targeting these leaders after what we did in Afghanistan and Iraq, where you could see in Iraq where we had the deck of cards soldiers were given to isolate and to capture or kill these leaders. So we employed the same strategy as the federal government for decades. What we were surprised to find out is take out the head of the snake and it reconstitutes in one way, shape, or form. If the organization doesn't survive, like the Tijuana cartel, like the Zetas, they'll rebrand, they'll rename. Some folks will run off and do other things, but generally speaking, the remnants of those criminal organizations are going to reconstitute, and they'll be back at it.
Yeah, I agree with that. So, what is the next steps in order to try to forge some sort of a lasting peace to make some of this worth it?
Well, I think what we're seeing out of the cartel is a twofold kind of situation. You know, they're definitely angry and they're extremely worried. This is more
Hmm.
worrisome for them than anything else because it's almost like the capture of Maduro. They just prove that secretly, which is what is most harmful to the cartels. They're in bed with generals, they're in bed with police officials, they're in bed with politicians. So it's hard to keep OPSEC, right? It's hard to keep things secret. They did this and they surprised this guy. So knowing that he wasn't able to get away, that puts the rest of his family, the other leaders, the leaders of other cartels, in great peril. Right? It's a bad message. So a lot of what they're doing right now is twofold: part retaliatory, and part we're going to create so much chaos you won't try and do this again. Another thing they may be worried about is what we saw in Colombia when they took out cartel leaders like Pablo Escobar. They never made it out alive, and we don't know the entire circumstances around the death of El Mencho.
Yeah. So, would it have been ideal if he was captured versus whether he was killed? Because it seemed like the orders were to capture him, but again, it seems like him being dead is not so bad.
Well, the biggest frustration with American law enforcement when we were involved in Colombia was hardly anybody was taken alive, right? And that deprives the authorities of intelligence. But on the other hand, dead men tell no tales, right? So if this person, El Mencho, had a lot of information about potentially government corruption, you can only speculate that that may be why he's not with us anymore. We don't know that, right? So that's something that we're going to learn perhaps. But that may be the fear that's striking the other cartels and the remnants of CJNG right now.
Yeah, really important. Okay, so how about the people of Mexico? Because it seems like there's a lot, and the people of America, for because it seems like a lot of, including Puerto Vallarta, a lot of resort areas are shut down, and it feels like it's one of these things where there's going to be a lot of human casualty and stress and strife due to this. So, is this perhaps a wake up call for some of these entities? I mean, some of these hotels that operate in the area, that this is not a safe place. I mean, could there be any sort of coalition that forms to try to make sure this stuff doesn't happen again? Because as I reported earlier at the top of the show, that the cartel's reaction to this was to just start torching things and looting and burning things and trying to do actual terrorism.
Well, sadly, this is something that the poor people, the innocent people of Mexico have had to deal with for decades, right? They too watched this grow and the violence increase. And in any place in Mexico that's known for tourism, there's already high cartel activity, right? Because there's a lot of money coming into those places. And where there's money, you have the cartel. They're involved in gambling, they're involved in liquor sales, the taxi industry, and those coastal areas are also used to bring in precursors and what have you. So they have a heavy presence. And so they're used to the cartel getting angry from time to time, showing their violence, and then everything will calm down. We may be in different territory right now. The Mexican government has to do something quick. Unless they're just going to let this play out, but it's starting to affect Americans, and that's not good for the cartels. It's not good for the Mexican government. Right now, there's about 18 states in which there's a shelter in place by the U.S. State Department, so it's not good. There's people that need to get back home, and that's really going to create a lot of chaos on both sides of the border.
But are there a lot of people in the Mexican government who wish it didn't happen, who would probably just content to see the cartels continue to operate the way they've been operating?
Well, I'm going to say absolutely. You know, the cartel business is lucrative for everybody. We spoke about how big the industry is over there, and they're on the payroll, right? A lot of government officials, a lot of military officials, a lot of politicians. That's the source of some of their income. So, yeah, they would rather this have not happened and business as usual continued.
So credit to Trump, Scheinbaum obviously working on it, which is a positive. What do you think happens next year? Because it's pretty chaotic at the moment.
Well, you know, I think it's all going to depend on what Donald Trump says is going to happen next. I think when you see that Claudia Scheinbaum was very quick to come out and say this was an intelligence operation. We know we've trained some of their military down there. We know we've used our surveillance unmanned aerial systems. So she's not hiding the fact that she's working closely with U.S. authorities. So it really the path forward is going to depend, I think, on what the United States wants.
Very nice. That's Randy Clark. He is a longtime law enforcement official who is now part of Breitbart's Cartel Chronicles initiative. I think we do the absolute best reporting in the game on this. Thank you, Randy. We also had a huge scoop on how it was actually the U.S. Navy SEALs training the Mexican military to take out El Mencho. So big dub for Trump and good on Scheinbaum for getting it done.